refreshing my laptop to make sure that we are live and I'm not just talking to myself. I think we're live now. A little check. Yeah, I think we're live, so hopefully you can hear this. So if you've been doing the morning practice with me on Tuesdays, it's been very, very relaxed. This class, it's going to be relaxed again. It's a yin yoga class, but we're going to be doing a few stronger postures today. We're going to get started. We're going to start in child's pose. So taking your knees nice and wide, walking your hands forward, resting the forehead on the mat. Just taking a few moments in this nice, gentle, restorative forward fold. And as always, we're just taking these first few moments to start to settle into the space. Leaving behind any distractions from work. Leaving aside any plans for after class. These days, those two things are not maybe such a concern as they generally are. I tend not to have many plans at the moment with this lockdown, but there are different distractions. Distractions in our environment. So maybe your space at home has small children running around, animals, neighbours, flatmates. This is time to start to tune out the outside world. Start to go inside. Turning your focus to the sensations in your body. Turning your focus to the sensations of the breath. Staying in child's pose, we're going to walk our hands to the right hand side. So for most of you, you'll be walking your hands off of your mat. You might even bring your left hand on top of the right hand. So we're feeling a stretch down the left side of the torso. Through your lats, maybe even into that left tricep. Get nice and relaxed, not forcing anything in this practice. So if you're new to yin yoga, which is a very slow practice, rather than rushing through pose to pose, rather than moving with the breath or working towards a particular peak time posture. In yin, we're just looking to come into every pose initially to an appropriate depth. Start to walk your hands back to the center. And then go in the opposite way, so walking hands to the left. And again, you might bring your right hand on top of the left hand, feeling that stretch now for the right side of the torso. So we're coming into the pose to an appropriate depth. So you might talk about going to your edge, or just going to that place of first resistance. That place where we feel something, but at a moderate intensity that we can hold for time. So in this practice, we're holding poses for anything from 2 minutes up to 20 minutes. In today's class, we're going to be working in the 2 to 5 minute range. Walking your hands back to the center. So in each pose, we're finding that place, we're finding that edge, that place of resistance. And then we're pausing and we're just observing what happens. And maybe we start to notice the body open up, and maybe we move deeper into a pose. Maybe it's the opposite, maybe we start to feel in pain, and then it's always okay to back off or modify this practice. And now starting to slide yourself forward onto your stomach, we're going to come into Sphinx pose. So bringing your elbows underneath your armpits, coming into a back bend. We can reduce our back bend further by taking our elbows further forwards. You might even support your chin and your hand. If you have blocks, if you have pillows, cushions, you might be bringing your hands on top of that for a really relaxed version of this posture. You might do the opposite. You might start to make this a little bit more stressful. You could do that by bringing your heels in towards your glutes, or you might even turn this into seal pose. Turning your hands out like a seal's flippers, pressing down, raising the chest. So feeling this version more in your lower back. So the only thing that's really important in this pose is that we're taking our spine through extension rather than being in flexion. While others are probably spending a lot of time at the moment. Probably spending more time on our devices, more time looking at our phone. Maybe we're working from home and we've got our laptop in a setup that's not necessarily the best setup, the kind of setup you might have in an office. Maybe we're having to make do working on sofas. So we're spending a lot of time rounding forward. So as long as you're doing the opposite of that here, you're getting the benefits of this posture. You're getting the benefits and you don't necessarily need to do anything else. A bit of a yang attitude to keep trying to push further. We're trying to avoid being yang within our yin practice. Coming into our last minute here now. Return to the standard Sphinx, come back down onto your forearms, lower your feet back down to the mat, pause here for a moment, and then release yourself all the way down to the mat. And slowly press yourself back again to child's pose. Taking a moment here, taking our spine through the opposite range of motion. We're preparing to come into melting heart. So we're going to do this maybe in a slightly different way to how we've done it before in this class, how you might have done it in other classes. We're going to use one arm as a pillow. And I'm going to tell you when we're halfway through and then we can switch arms. So the right arm is a pillow, left hand walks forward, resting your forehead on the back of that right arm. So your hips are above your knees. If you really want to go further, you could take this into puppy pose. Take both arms forward, bringing your forehead down to the mat. Always the option to come all the way down onto your chest and chin. For most people, that's going to be a little bit too much. So try to take a relaxed approach to this practice. This version of just having one arm as a pillow is still going to give people benefits. You're still taking your spine into a back bend. You're still working to open up the shoulders. Many people's shoulders are an area of tension and restriction. That's why we frequently notice signals of pain and discomfort in this pose. They might come in the form of a tingling sensation in your hands or fingertips. So if you're feeling that, come to this staggered version, or even bring both arms in and create your pillow. Just a few more seconds and then we'll change to the other side. And switching arms, so that left arm comes in, the right arm is extended. Maybe you're walking the right hand forward, so just the palm is touching the ground, maybe letting your elbow and forearm rest on the mat. So as Bernie Clark often says, always looking for sensation, but that sensation should never be sensational. So trying to look for that Goldilocks position, not too hot, not too cold. As we come to our last minute here. Slowly making your way back to child's pose. This time bring your knees closer together so you're creating a space by the feet, hands by the feet, palms facing the sky. So again, taking that gentle forward fold, giving our shoulders a break in the process. So I often say that yin is a simple practice, but simple doesn't necessarily mean easy. Our next pose is a very good example of that. So we're going to come into toe stand. So simply curling your toes under. This is all we're doing. Sitting back on the heels, curling the toes under. You might stay here. If this gets a little bit too much, maybe come up onto your knees, take a little bit of pressure off. If it's really too much, you could even bring the hands down to the ground. But ideally, we're keeping our hands off of the ground so we can start to work into the upper body, specifically our traps. So we're going to take the right hand to the base of the spine, the back of the hand against your back, and then we're going to let our head fall to the side. So left ear to left shoulder, an option to use that left hand with a little bit of extra weight. So by now we know this is not a practice of forcing, so we're certainly not pulling the head down, just merely resting the hand lightly there, a little bit of an extra stretch to the side of the neck into the traps. Use your hand to support the chin, return the head to the center, switching sides, so trying to roll that shoulder back, Let your right ear fall to right shoulder, and again, option to use the hand, that little bit of extra weight. As we work into the traps, an area of tension for many of us, working into the side of the neck, also working into our feet, opening up our toes, strengthening our ankles, maintaining the flexibility, dexterity of the feet. It's very important to maintain our sense of balance. And using the hand to support the head again, return the head to the center. We're going to come into one final hand position, reverse prayer. So hands together in prayer, but behind the back, again, rolling shoulders up, back and down. If this is too much, you might turn the prayer down to the ground. If that's not accessible, maybe you just hold opposite elbows. If that's not accessible, maybe holding the outside of your hand. Just making sure the hands are behind your back in some form, and you're trying to roll the shoulders back. Release your hands down to the mat. Turn your feet over. We're going to take a nice counter pose, so simply rocking back on your feet the opposite way. And then we're preparing to come into dragon pose. So we're going to take a big step forward with our right foot. And then bring your hands either side of that foot so we're in low flying dragon. If this is relatively easy and you want to go a little bit further, you might bring your hands up onto that front thigh. You might add a yang element of taking your hands up to the sky. You could always take flying dragon by curling your toes under, lifting that back knee. You can combine that with reaching hands up to the sky. This is becoming very, very yang. For most people, even this low flying version is going to have a good effect working into the top of that back leg. So again, finding the Goldilocks position for you. If this is too much for the back knee, you might fold your mat over, giving that extra layer of cushioning. I usually like to use 2 mats for this pose. I've got multiple mats here, but just to keep this video quicker when I'm moving the mat around, I'm just using 1 today. You could use a blanket or a towel under your knee as well, or maybe in that gap between the ankle and the mat. So I'm not going to be in this version of dragon for as long as the other poses. That's the good news. That does imply that it's going to be more than 1 dragon. So maybe that's the bad news. Last 30 seconds in this version. Bringing your hands inside of that front foot, we're going to prepare for gecko pose. So we're walking our right foot forward and slightly out. Maybe you slide your left knee back. Your knee could fall out to the side. And then we have the option of staying on our hands. Maybe bringing one elbow down to the ground, maybe both elbows. Maybe if that's not accessible, you bring your elbows down onto a block or a pillow or cushion. If you really want to go to the extreme, you might turn this into monkey pose. Start to walk that right foot out further, start to slide it away. So you're coming into kind of the yin version of Hanumanasana. So kind of a front split position, but coming out to the side, so a little bit easier. maybe. We're halfway through here in Gecko. So we have that intention, we're working into our left hip flexor. We're working into the hamstring, working into the groin of that right leg. And then we're paying attention to how we're feeling throughout this posture. If you're feeling now coming to the last 40 seconds, you could go deeper. Maybe you're coming down to elbows. Maybe you're coming into monkey. It could be the opposite. You might be feeling that you've overstayed your welcome. Feel free to return to low flying dragon, or even take child's pose. Using your hands to raise the chest, keep a weight back in your hips, maybe walk that left knee slightly forward, and a transition to just a very kind of relaxed version of downward dog. So not looking to get our heels to the ground, not looking for the perfect pose, just a position where we can start to add a little movement, starting to walk out those last couple of poses. We're going to take our right leg to the sky, take the right knee to the right elbow, preparing for a sleeping swan. So take your foot across towards the opposite wrist, slide your left leg back, so you're in a sleeping swan. We start up on our hands, so we're making sure we're feeling this in the right place, in that outer glute, outer hip area. If you're feeling it there and not in your knee, you might decide to go a little bit further forward, coming down to elbows and forearms. You might even make a pillow for your head. You might rest your head directly on the mat. So if you're feeling it in the knee, that's never a good sign. That's another one of those warning signs. So maybe you stay up on your hands, keeping the weight back in your hips. Or maybe you completely change the position of this pose. So we have an idea that we have to be in the middle of our mat in this perfectly straight line. We don't need that at all. We could start off with this front shin parallel to the top of the mat. Maybe we bend our back leg so we have this 90-90 position. From here, you might even walk your hands off to one side. Hands might be in the middle, you might be walking the hands the other way. Just experimenting. The most important thing is that you're feeling this in the right area. Completely irrelevant how it looks. So if you've experimented with these different options and none of this is working, you can just take this shape on your back. So you're coming into that eye of the needle pose. This is a very individual practice, so what works for one person will not work for somebody else. Last 30 seconds here. To keep the weight back in your hips. Transition back to downward facing dog. Start to walk out your dog again. Gentle steps, just bending one knee, then the other. A little bit of movement after a prolonged period of stillness. Sometimes it's really good for the body. And we're going to meet on our backs in pentacle pose. So take your legs wide, take your arms wide, create a big X-like shape, a big star shape. Just take a moment here to observe the rebound. So rebound is just a mindful time out. So nothing to stretch here, nowhere to be, no problems to solve. All we're aiming to do is connect to our body. Maybe now paying particular attention to your hips. Bring your knees into the chest, take a gentle rock from side to side, and making your way towards the back of your mat, however you want to get there. So you might just rock backwards and forwards and rock up. We're preparing to take that hip opening sequence on the opposite side. So turn around and then take a step forward to the top of the mat with my left foot, bringing the hands either side of that foot, low flying dragon again. Of course, there's the option to stay here, or maybe you're coming into dragon, bringing hands onto the front thigh, maybe starting to take the hands up to the sky, maybe taking that flying version, curling your toes under and lifting. When we do take our hands up to the sky, we might start to feel this a little bit more in the iliopsoas. The top two hip flexors together, known as the iliopsoas. And you'll probably feel this a little bit more in this area around navel, just above the hip bone. That doesn't mean that this is a good option for everyone. For most people, staying here is more than enough. I'm going to be here for another 40 seconds. Now bringing your hands inside that front foot, preparing for gecko, so walking left foot forward and slightly out, sliding right knee back. Maybe we stay here, maybe we come down onto one elbow, maybe both elbows. Maybe working to walk that left foot a little bit further, coming into our monkey. Using your block to bring your elbows down to, remember again, we're still trying to work at that middle way, still looking for that Goldilocks position. So if you're here biting your lip, crying, screaming, probably an indication that you've gone a little bit too far. I don't want anybody having flashbacks to this pose when we're finally allowed to travel again and a gecko runs across your terrace in Spain. Shouldn't be that kind of practice. It should be a restorative, rejuvenating class. Last minute here. And sensations guide you now. Is the body inviting you to move deeper? Is it advising you to back off? Constantly having that intention, constantly paying attention. And using the hands to press the weight back into your hips, slowly transitioning to downward facing dog, walking out of your dog again, gentle steps. Lifting your left leg, taking left knee to left elbow, preparing for a sleeping swan, taking out the left foot towards the right wrist, sliding back. We start upright again on our hands, making sure we're feeling this in that target area, outer glute, outer hip. Then we might consider coming down onto our elbows, we might make a pillow for our head, might rest our head directly on the floor. Even if you're staying in this version of the pose, you might explore walking your hands off to the right, walking your hands off to the left. Maybe that increases the sensation for you. Always the option to come into that 90 position again, or even taking this pose on your back, eye of the needle style. So not being attached to recreating the pose from the previous side. I often say that nobody's symmetrical. Your hips may differ from left to right. That difference may be quite dramatic. So if your bones are different shapes and sizes, if the sockets are different depths, if the angle of your sockets differ, make perfect sense that the pose will look and feel different. That's why we're really not concerned with aesthetics in this practice. Sensation is always more important than shape. Coming towards our last minute here now. Starting to press the weight back into your hips, raising the chest, and slowly making your way back to downward facing dog. Walking out the dog again, gentle steps. And we'll meet on our back in pentacle pose, so legs wide, arms wide. Taking another moment here in the rebound. Let's see if this feels different to the rebound from just a few moments ago. Maybe now you're feeling more balanced. Maybe it's a different physical feeling. Maybe an emotional feeling. Maybe an energetic feeling. What you're feeling is not really important. The important thing is you're taking this time to be present, to connect, and to feel something. And slowly bringing the knees into your chest. We're going to take a gentle rock from side to side. I'm going to come into a reclining twist now. So soles of the feet down to the ground in that constructive rest position. Taking the arms wide or diagonal. I'm going to lift the hips ever so slightly and move them slightly off center to the left. Place them down. Then bring the knees together above your waist. Feel free to take any kind of twisted root option, wrapping one leg over the other. For most people, just staying here, knees together, and then let your knees fall to the right hand side. So you're in a reclining twist. We have a number of different options in our twist. If you've done my classes before, you'll know that I like to grab a cushion and place it between the inner legs. I think this was a really nice restorative version of the posture. You might not have your knees touching the ground, so you might place a cushion or a block underneath your knees and maybe rolled up blankets, whatever it is you have to hand. The position of your arms and head is changeable and optional. So arms could be wide, you might prefer to take them diagonal, more like in our star shape we've been taking for the rebound. You might like to take a bend in the elbows in this kind of goal pose position. Your head could stay in the center. Could look towards the knees to target the left shoulder. You could look away from the knees, target your upper back. And whatever version you're choosing, just ensure it's one that allows you to find complete comfort and relaxation. So feeling free to close your eyes or soften the gaze. And start to really sink into the mat. Let this twist do all of the work. Start to enjoy the feeling of doing less but feeling more. Again, staying aware of any warning signs here. You start to feel any kind of tingling in your hands or fingertips. Listen to the body, bring the hands down alongside your hips or rest them on top of your ribs. Keeping the knees as they are. Start to bring that left hand across the body to join the right. Pause on your right hand side for a moment. And then make your way onto your back. Just pause for a moment in that constructive rest pose. Soles of the feet on the ground, neutral spine, nice and relaxed. From constructive rest, we're going to lift the hips slightly, move them slightly off center to the right, place them down. Bring the knees together above your waist, and then we let the knees fall to the left. Again, option to use your props, your pillows, whatever you have around. Maybe placing it between the thigh, maybe underneath the knees. All of those options from the previous side apply. Remember not being attached to recreating the twist from the previous side. Let sensation be your guide. Prioritize complete comfort and relaxation. Four words that are useful to remember throughout a yin yoga practice are release, soften, and let go. So if you can do all three of those things here. So you can let go of any tension that you're holding. See if you can soften into your mats. Moving into our last minute here. Reaching your right hand across the body to join the left. Pause on your left hand side for a moment. And make your way onto your back. And take another moment in that constructive rest pose. Soles of the feet on the ground. Just a moment here. Just neutralizing the spine. From this position, we're going to make our way into TP pose. So just walking your feet slightly wider. Let your knees fall in towards each other. So we're just looking to create roughly a triangular shape. So not trying to get the knees to touch here, just internally rotating the hips. If you do find that your knees are touching, maybe just walk your feet a little bit wider. This is a movement that we miss out a lot in yoga. We're often externally rotated, not so much of this movement. If we want a well-rounded hip opening practice, it's important to include this as well. Yin Yoga is known as a very mindful practice. We may have so long in each posture, we can turn each pose into almost a mini meditation. And if we're practicing this way that I've recommended throughout the class of anchoring your awareness into changing sensations in the pose, and using your breath as an anchor for the practice. So when the mind starts to wander, keep bringing it back to the breath, keep bringing it back to the sensations in your body. And just by doing this, we're essentially turning the posture into a meditation. And that's why you may leave a Yin Yoga class the same kind of benefits you would get from an extended meditation. You might leave with a renewed sense of mental clarity, a very real sense of calm. And maybe things that were agitating you before the practice don't have that same sway over you anymore. Moving into our last 60 seconds here. I'm going to take the opposite movement now, so start to walk the soles of the feet together. So we're coming into reclining butterfly pose. So the soles of the feet connect and knees fall out to the side. Again, still trying to keep that relatively flat back, maintaining that natural arch of the spine. So not forcing our knees down to the mat. In actual fact, if you find that your knees are going a little bit too deep and this is feeling a bit too much for your groin, the abductors, then you might use that cushion again, or if you have blocks, or some thick books, maybe some Harry Potter books, and placing them underneath those outer thighs for a little bit of added support. Remember, we're prioritizing comfort and relaxation in this practice. Sometimes think of the physical benefits of Yin Yoga as kind of a side effect. So if you imagine walking outside in some drizzle, the idea is not to get soaking wet, but when you come home, that will be the end result. So these poses, using them as an opportunity to escape from the manic cycle of our daily lives. Using it as a rare opportunity to just spend time with ourselves. Any physical benefits that come with that, treating them as a bonus. Slowly starting to walk the feet towards each other, pausing in that constructive rest again. The soles of the feet on the ground, neutral spine. Just taking a moment here. I'm going to come into a pose known as Stonehenge. What you would ordinarily do in a yoga class environment is build a henge using your blocks on their highest setting and then placing a bolster across the top. Many of us at home don't have these things, but we do have things that are raised that we could sit on. So that might be your sofa, it could be a bed, it could be a large box, a Reebok step if you're a 90s person, a 90s fitness enthusiast, whatever it might be. Just something where you can lay on your back and then put your feet up. That's all we're looking for. If you can get closer to this so you can have your knees supported, then that's even better. And then the position of our hands is completely optional. So your palms could be facing the sky. You might have one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. Whatever feels good for you, again, prioritizing comfort and relaxation. So this should be a really restorative posture. A pose where you can just let go, just sink into your mat. It's also the sort of pose, if you're a very type A personality, you might struggle to stay here. You might feel like this is a waste of time. Not really doing anything here, we're just laying with our feet up. Actually, in many postures, it's when we do nothing that everything happens. So many of us spend our days in this constant state of fight or flight. We can really relax our muscles when we can completely let go. We can start to access this state of rest and digest. Although it may seem counterintuitive, often the less we force and strive, less effort we put into the posture, the greater the benefits of the pose. Trying to access that deep restorative place of relaxation for our last few postures. Preparing now for our final pose, preparing for Shavasana. If you're very happy in this hybrid Stonehenge position, and feel free to stay here. Otherwise, start to take any movements that feel good for you. Take any props you need to make yourself comfortable. And start to make your way into any other comfortable position on your back. So maybe just laying down in corpse pose, legs outstretched, shoulders away from ears, palms facing the sky. Starting to find these last few moments of stillness. Finding stillness of the body, stillness of the breath, and stillness of the mind. Starting to bring some awareness back into your body by gently moving your fingers and toes. When you're ready, taking a big stretch through the whole body, taking the arms up overhead. Bringing your knees into your chest and turning onto your right hand side. Pausing here for a moment. Keeping the eyes closed, use your left hand to push your way up to a seated position. Bringing the palms together in front of your chest. Gently bowing the head and bringing the fingertips to your forehead. Namaste. Your practice, guys. Enjoy your Friday evening, enjoy your weekend, whatever you have planned, presumably staying at home, maybe taking a small walk to the shops, but enjoy it anyway, and I hope to see you here again next week.